In the past, the Time Variance Authority, also known as the TVA, attempts to apprehend Loki while he is uncontrollably warping across time in their headquarters. In the present, Loki reunites with Mobius and warns him of the threat posed by the many variants of He Who Remains, the TVA's creator. Concurrently, TVA member General Dox has several TVA hunters arm themselves, ostensibly to find Sylvie, who caused the sacred timeline to branch after killing He Who Remains. Loki and Mobius meet TVA technician Aurora Boris, also known as OB, who deduces that Loki is time-slipping, a phenomenon possibly caused by branching timelines dangerously overloading the temporal loom. To save Loki, OB instructs Mobius to approach the temporal loom with the temporal aura extractor device to extract Loki from the time stream as Loki prunes himself. Loki time-slips to the future, where the TVA is being evacuated as the loom goes critical. He encounters Sylvie before he is pruned by someone at the last minute. In the present, Mobius successfully pulls Loki from the time stream, and they set out to find Sylvie. In a mid-credits scene, Sylvie enters a branched timeline in Broxton, Oklahoma, 1982, and visits a McDonald's restaurant. Loki, Mobius, and Hunter B-15 find and capture Hunter X-5 in London, 1977, on the sacred timeline, where he lives as film actor Brad Wolfe. Under interrogation, he admits to abandoning Dox's mission and reveals Sylvie's location. Meanwhile, OB attempts to repair the loom to safely accommodate the branching timelines, but discovers he cannot access it without help from the missing Miss Minutes or He Who Remains aura. Loki, Mobius, and Wolf travel to Oklahoma and find Sylvie working in a McDonald's. Loki tells her of their encounter in the TVA's future and asks for her assistance to figure out what would happen, but Sylvie refuses to involve herself with the TVA. After Wolf proclaims the group is in mortal danger, Sylvie enchants him, forcing him to reveal Dox's plan to simultaneously destroy the branching timelines with reset charges. Sending Wolf back into custody, Loki, Mobius, and Sylvie capture Dox, but her plan has largely succeeded and some of her loyalists have escaped. As TVA receptionist Casey tracks the rogue Ravonna Renslayer's tempad on one of the remaining branching timelines, Sylvie declares that the TVA is rotten and returns to McDonald's with He Who Remains tempad in her possession. Miss Minutes and Ravonna travel to Chicago, 1868, to secretly drop the TVA guidebook to a young Victor Timely, a variant of He Who Remains, who informed Miss Minutes about this plan before his death. They then travel to 1893 at the Chicago World's Fair on this branched timeline, where Loki and Mobius arrive tracking Ravonna's tempad. There, they see Timely presenting his temporal loom prototype. Timely then has 4 groups chasing him: Loki and Mobius, who want to use his aura to fix the loom, Ravonna and Miss Minutes, who want him to take his variant's place with them at his side, Sylvie, who wants to kill him to prevent his rise to power, and a robber baron and his allies wanting revenge against Timely's fake invention scam. Timely escapes the fair with Ravonna and Miss Minutes, although Miss Minutes convinces Timely to abandon Ravonna. At Timely's Wisconsin laboratory, he turns Miss Minutes off after she professes romantic love for him. Ravonna, Loki, Mobius, and Sylvie arrive, with Sylvie gaining control. Seeing Timely's fear, Sylvie allows Loki to take him back to the TVA, then sends Ravonna to the Citadel at the end of time, with Miss Minutes being brought along. They see He Who Remains' decaying corpse as Miss Minutes reveals that she knows a secret about Ravonna. Miss Minutes reveals that in the past, Ravonna commanded He Who Remains' army. He proposed that Ravonna lead the TVA with him, then had Miss Minutes erase the memories of Ravonna and other TVA employees. As the temporal loom reaches catastrophic failure, Loki and his allies attempt to use Timely and OB's throughput multiplier to fix it. Ravonna and Miss Minutes attempt to take over the TVA, approaching the detained Wolf, Dox, and her loyalists for help. Only Wolf agrees. Dox and her loyalists instead choose to be crushed to death by Miss Minutes. Wolf kidnaps Timely. While staging a rescue, Sylvie and Loki encounter his time-slipping past self. Loki prunes his past self. OB deactivates Miss Minutes and the TVA's magic suppressing devices. This enables Sylvie to enchant Wolf, controlling him to prune Ravonna. Timely is rescued and is able to restore access to the temporal loom, but the loom's increased temporal radiation spaghettifies him before he can launch the throughput multiplier. The temporal loom explodes, and the blast wave spreads toward Loki, Mobius, Sylvie, B-15, Casey, and OB in the TVA. Loki survives the explosion, but everyone else has vanished and the TVA headquarters spaghettifies. Loki escapes as he begins time-slipping again, taking him to the branch timelines where his friends Mobius, Hunter B-15, Casey, and OB were reset to their original lives. Wanting to time-slip to before the explosion, Loki enlists this original version of Mobius, known as Dawn, for help. With Loki unable to control his time-slipping, original OB, also known as AD Doug, proposes Loki gather everyone present at the explosion back together so that their collective temporal aura can send them back to the right time and place. Doug builds a tempad using a TVA guidebook that Loki kept. Loki succeeds in gathering everyone else to Doug's workshop except Sylvie, who has retained her memories. Refusing to help, Sylvie gets Loki to admit his true motivation. He wants his friends back and fears being alone. When everything in Sylvie's timeline spaghettifies, she goes to help Loki. However, Doug's workshop also spaghettifies, as do these original versions of Mobius, B-15, Casey, OB, and Sylvie. Loki finally controls his time-slipping by focusing on a person. Declaring that he can rewrite the story, Loki time-slips to before the explosion by focusing on OB. Loki time-slips to the moment before the temporal loom's explosion. Despite his attempts, the loom ultimately fails to accommodate the infinite branches. Loki slips to the moment before Sylvie kills He Who Remains, who tells Loki that the loom is a failsafe. Overloading it protects the sacred timeline by deleting the branches along with the TVA. He Who Remains suggests Loki kill Sylvie to save the loom, which Loki rejects. After consulting Mobius and Sylvie at different moments in time, Loki replaces Timely in approaching the loom. Loki destroys the loom, magically rejuvenates the dying timelines, and rearranges them into a tree-like structure, committing himself to oversee the branches alone at the end of time. The TVA now tracks He Who Remains variants across the growing branches, with Mobius reporting one variant being stopped at Earth 616's adjacent realm, likely a reference to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. B-15 becomes one of the TVA's leaders. OB reactivates a now friendly Miss Minutes and writes a new TVA handbook with Timely as co-author. In one timeline, Timely did not receive the TVA handbook in 1863. Ravonna awakens in the Void and encounters Alioth. Mobius retires from the TVA. He and Sylvie observe Dawn, the original version of Mobius, as well as his children, from afar.